Good morning, and thank you for joining me, Sangha, and my fantastic co host, Morton. And today we have none other than Professor Vic Rayner, CEO of National Care Forum. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's a good introduction of Professor Vic Rayner.
Of course, yes.
Lovely to have you on here. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm good. It's remains busy, doesn't it? And the term challenging times seems to have a never-ending time frame attached to it.
Oh, absolutely. Right now with cost of living, energy crisis, of course, coming after the forbidden COVID word and all of that stuff.
Yeah, there's so many things that make it hard to deliver care and to be receiving care, I think, at the moment.
Absolutely. And how are your members venturing now? How are they doing?
Well, I think so. We work with the not-for-profit part of the care sector, so we have a very kind of mixed membership in that sense, and members are delivering, all different types of care: home care, residential care, supported living, day centres, everything. And I think they each have their, their different sort of strengths and challenges at this moment. And lots of our members are also housing organisations as well. So what's really interesting, I think, about National Care Forum members is often they have a really strong link into the community that they're part of. So, the things that they offer are they move and change in relation to what their local community needs. So I think, they are busy in a stage of recovery at some level, but also looking with some kind of anxiety to the future. But what's brilliant about them, I have to say, is they continue to want to share information, they continue to want to work with each other, they continue to want to innovate and try and address those challenges head on. So they're always a joy to work with.
Absolutely. Looking at the care sector just now, it's hard not to feel that or be really proud of all the work that's going on because of all the challenges that just consecutively and out of the blue seem to happen to us. And I like that you say that your members seem to be tackling this in a very positive manner.
Yeah, and that's resilience, I think, is one of the core strength of the sector, even though, we get all the challenges and problems in a continuous basis, like you say, in truckloads. But we seem to do okay with all our challenges.
Yeah, we do. I think, but it's the risk is that there's just a kind of rolling of them a bit further down, and one of the difficulties for care, I think, is because of that constant sort of set of challenges. It's really hard to sort of say, let's look 5 years ahead, let's look 10 years ahead. And I think, that has, of course, there's a sort of survival mode, which is perhaps part of resilience, but the other bit of resilience that we don't really tap into as much as we can because there's no space to think about it is that kind of what has to be different to be better than surviving in 5 to 10 years' time, because you get into a way of working and a way of thinking which is just about kind of what's tomorrow, not what's the opportunity in 5 years' time. From a kind of that's a big problem for sort of everybody working across care, I think, and particularly I look at the kind of care leadership, and I think different to many other sectors, we don't invest in that kind of leadership in a way that would enable them to think what's next, what's tomorrow, what's the decade ahead. We just sort of set a load of figures that say, things are going to be much worse in 10 years' time, and then we just get on with today's problems. And I kind of, that's the bit. The world keeps changing quickly around the sector, and it's not changing at the speed it needs to keep up.
So right, and epitomizing what you're saying, I was just on LinkedIn reading a rather heartbreaking, actually, statement from one of the MDs from one of your member organizations saying that being such a values-driven organization, wanting to be visionary, wanting to create a future of desire for the people that they support, and then with the current accumulation of crises from here and there, it was hard for them to see that this was going to be any better than what COVID presented to them as a challenge. And it was going to be survival mode again and again. And that is, of course, a thing that we need to perhaps also on a political level try and address, and of course not necessarily solve in this podcast, unfortunately. Would be nice though if we could. We can interest ourselves though with some of the great work that you guys are doing now, and just reading on your website, and of course having seen multiple things that you are doing, I'm super interested in the Hubble project.
Yes, Hubble is a really fantastic example, actually, of being, as a membership body, being led by our members and where they kind of take us. Because the Hubble prospect, the idea of it came out of the work that WCS Care had done, where they had put together a physical hub for people to come, an innovation hub for people to come and see new tech, all different types of tech in person. And actually, the original Hubble project was going to be physical as well, but COVID came along and it transferred into a digital project, a virtual project in that sense. And that was really interesting because actually, of course, that provides it with a level of longevity around it. So we ran it originally. The project ran as face-to-face sessions, so a bit like this, but live kind of webinars where people could come and ask questions, and they were very well attended, and each of the hubs did that. And then we transferred it into a kind of longer-term project by using the clips and videos and narrative from those sessions to make them something really standalone. And what that did was showcase bits of tech, and of course the bits of tech were important. I would say that to Sequoia, but those bits of tech are really important. But more important was showcasing the journey that people went on, actually. So, being able to talk about the leadership, the culture change, the things that are necessary in terms of training and developing of staff, how you communicate this with relatives and help and people who you're providing care and support to, so they understand the journey, how you plan into new building design and environments. And actually, we're really proud of having that there as a project that then can sort of stand the test of time. And of course, the tech in it, and that's part of the story, isn't it? In a way, the tech itself becomes less of the issue. It's more about how you change. And I think certainly having worked with lots of different organisations at different places in their digital journey through this role, one of the things that seems to me really apparent is if you can get that culture change right at the first bit of tech that major bit of tech that you introduce, if you can make people feel safe, if you can make people feel involved and make it feel that they're part of a project, then actually whatever you then want to do is much more straightforward because you've got people's buy-in. You did what you said you were going to do. They haven't all lost their job. The quality of care hasn't fallen off the edge, whatever their fear was in relation to that, you've given them a chance to talk about it. So I think Hubble is a great way of showing that. I think the other things that we do a lot of to bring people together. So we have a digital forum, an IG forum. We have a whole range of practice forums, and what they do is give people a chance to hear from each other and say, I'm doing this. What are you doing? How did you take that forward? What was the first hurdle you fell out? Can I learn from that? How do I do something different? So we do that through our forums, and we've also developed, in partnership with Skills for Care, a really exciting digital leadership program. And again, you'd think probably from the outside, people might think, well, that's just going to be a sort of lecture about all the different types of tech, but it's much more about leadership than it is about digital. But there is something, I think it wouldn't be, it's important to give, one of the things that has been very interesting in that is the people we brought along are already leaders. So they're already managers. They've already got a leadership role. So we shouldn't be having to tell them some of the things around leadership per se, but actually people do still need to learn how doing that in a digital context actually is about applying a lot of the same skills, because they think I don't understand it, so I won't know how to do it. Whereas if we said, you're introducing a new, rota system, or you're introducing a new safeguarding policy, they would think, right, well, okay, we've got to give people, we've got to tell people what they were doing before, what they're going to do differently in the future, how they're going to do it, how we're going to support them. And of course, if you help them do that through a digital lens, then they can understand how to apply that same leadership skill that they have across digital too.
Yeah, that's exactly in line with how we often say, it always starts with people, then your process, and then like finally it's your technology. Technology is just a tool. Put the digital tech aside,
Yes.
it's just a tool.
Yeah.
If you're one of your members and you're going to the market to try and find out what type of new system you want for a certain issue you've got or a niche you've got, obviously you'll be shopping around and having a good time with
Mm.
almost like if you're changing your car or if you want to go in a more eco-friendly way with your car, and it's a whole examining the market space, and of course tech matters and the products matter, but those organizations that they represent as well, they matter too. And who are they and what kind of service do you get? Of course, you're right. The process and how you bring people together in that respect is a lot more important eventually than the actual features.
Yeah, and I think the car is a really interesting analogy because I think often, people uh, people assume everybody chooses cars in the same way, with a level of interrogation of the detail. And actually, there's lots of people who just go, "Ooh, I know nothing about cars. What did you buy?" Not really considering, what are the factors that are important to them in terms of how many people have I got to get in the car. They just sort of, there's a bit of a kind of panic in the same way that I think there was digital. So we work very closely with digital social care, uh, which has been a really important alliance between a range of care provider organisations. And one of the key sort of things that we have been producing through there are exactly that kind of step by step. You want a new care planning system. You want a new you want to make sure your data protection's up to date. You want to think about cybersecurity. So what are the steps that you have to take in order to get yourself properly ready for that, and what are the choices you need to make, and who do you need to involve at what stage? Because I think this is these are important changes for people to make. And of course, we've now got a kind of reform program steaming, well, I'm not sure quite what speed, but potentially steaming at speed down the line, which is trying to talk about everybody moving, well, now 80%, but moving on to a digital care planning system by March 2024. Well, that's 18 months away. And we know, organizations who've been busy trying to do this for a very long time know that actually the market progress has not gone, 10% this year, 20% next year, 40%. It hasn't worked like that. So if we're going to try and get people to move at that kind of pace, we're going to have to put a lot of support systems around them in order to make it not, make us not at March 2024 to be able to tick a big box that says everybody's got a system, but brackets 50% of them aren't using it.
Though, and it's so important, like again, aligning and we're underlining that it's not just about the incentives to increment people slowly to go and get a system via some kind of co-funding. It's actually all the things that you just mentioned about training, feeling comfortable, knowing we don't need a car, we need a bus here, or I
Yeah.
mean that's quintessential, and it's more important than getting a bit of that co-funded.
That's some of the stuff that kickstarts change. But it's not. If you think about it as a sort of, you have to be clear about what all the wraparound change is, and I think that's right. So if somebody helps buy the car, they don't pay for running it. They don't pay for the driving lessons. They don't pay for the tax on the road, and actually, but it doesn't mean you don't want a car. Because you're going to need the car because they've cancelled the bus service, whatever it is. But there are what you've got to, we've got to be really clear, I suppose, over and over again, that as you say, that's not the end of the story.
Actually, I think sometimes I do think that we think that because we're now investing in, and I'm using the word investing rather than using the word adding cost, investing in technology, I think looking at it from a return on investment perspective, I think a lot of organizations will quite quickly find that our return on investment is not in years, it's in months. If they,
Yes.
for instance, get a digital rota system or something like that, perhaps it's easier for people in their teams to swap shifts and all that stuff. You don't need a middleman or someone to administer all of that stuff all the time. So I think the
Yeah.
efficiency gains and so on will, of course, help sponsor that you're actually becoming more the organization that you want to be. So sometimes from the return on investment perspective, I don't think that it's the, as you said, the here and now upfront payment to make you go that makes you go forever. But
Yeah.
I realize
And
it's important.
I think that's why there is that challenge about how which bit of tech you, because I think you're right, that return on investment, and that's part of the bit that sort of spins people's perceptions around digital, isn't it? So if you get the bit of tech right, that there might be it might be software, or it might be kind of upgrading some hardware in the organization. There may be lots of different things that you could do. It might be changing your kind of alarm call system to something else. But if you do that bit right, then that enables people. I think the difficulty is with the sort of the risk with the funded is you kind of channel everybody through one route and say this is the only introductory route.
Yeah.
And of course, for many people, they've already done various elements of tech. So,
Yeah.
it's only going to work as a route in if it then ties in with everything else that they have.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where we as a sector face a lot of challenges. Well, like you were saying a couple of minutes ago, we don't think what is going to change the future, or what is it that is needed to really change the future. We often don't think what technology or what digital aid is going to really make our future even better. And one of my fear is, just going down that rabbit hole, that this is the way you do digital, or this is the way you digitize an organization, without having that concept of what is the ROI, or spending time to actually understand the ROI as a concept in the sector is something that I think we as a sector has to talk more about.
Well, and I think the
And
thing is, we kind of position change as only one outcome.
Mm.
So we get we get stuck in a sort of narrative that say, and I think digital is really interesting about this, because people's opposition to digital is that it's going to take away personal care.
Mm.
So it's going to take away the time that people's have, and some of people's fear of digital as well is a kind of workforce fear, that they fear that we'll lose people's jobs. And it's like we don't allow digital to exist in to meet a number of different agendas, which might. We also talk about the massive shortage in the workforce. So what we don't seem to be able to say without feeling that it's kind of that it will be subject to challenge is that digital might well, and I think for many people does, improve their quality of life in their terms of how independently they might live. Now that is something that is there for people who are in regulated services, so care homes, home care services. So that's true of software care planning and other things, because it tells people about what really works for them. And it might also mean we need less people in the sector because things are done more efficiently or differently. And these things are not necessarily going to, because you've got less people doesn't mean you're necessarily going to have less quality of personalised care.
No.
And I think we've got to start, particularly with the workforce challenge, we have to start thinking about not just how tech will improve people's care, but also how tech will reduce the reliance on the workforce. Because the realities of needing 500,000 more people in care, plus knowing that we have potentially 500,000 people who are coming up for retirement age in the next 10 years, mean that we've got 1 million people potentially to fill a gap with.
It's
If technology can't help us with that, let's know now. But
Yeah.
I suspect it can. But we need to be talking about how it helps us and being really clear and open with everybody about that.
It's a really, really tough, but also, of course, in some ways, a beautiful challenge that we've got a big grey tendency or trend right now, where a lot of people luckily can grow a lot older and can stay in their own homes, independent. And I remember reading a survey about what people would actually prefer, and that probably even counts me in, at least, that for as long as I'm able to, at least, I'd like to stay on top of my own things.
Yes.
Of
Yes.
course,
Yeah.
something like remote monitoring or an app where I check in myself rather than people come and check on me. I'm sure what you're saying can be like a future desirable scenario for us, that we can still go for quality of life, even though we have a workforce shortage around the corner.
It's not, that's the problem. It's not. So in a sense, we've almost got this, that because it's not round the corner, we can't we don't seem to be, we don't have the time to think about it. But,
True.
these things kind of all mesh together, and
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to be bold about that. And I think we not just have to be able to say it ourselves, but we have to make it palatable for politicians to be able to say that too. And the reality is, if you look at any politician trying to reduce what people see as face-to-face services, often in the context of acute hospitals, the political uproar surrounding them is huge. But actually, that some of the reasoning for that is because medicine management has changed, and the way in which people need to remain in hospital for respite has changed, because we can enable people to go home and have virtual wards within the home. There's a connection between the two, but we're not very brave politically, or not. It's not a very popular message to say we need less of this and more of that, because it takes away the thing that people are very familiar with.
That's a really, really good point.
True. And also, when we talk about quality of life, it's not just the people we care, but also the people who serve us, to provide that care. And I believe that with technology, it's possible to improve the quality of care for those people who are supporting the sector, specifically with their salary growth and so on and so forth. That's a different topic altogether. But I think that's what often gets mistaken, that digital, it's going to reduce the number of people, we are going to lose the job, let's stop digital. I think we need to look more beyond that,
Yeah.
and look at how
the
how it's going to really improve.
Your job is much more enjoyable, and the skills
Exactly.
that you have are recognized, and the things that you do are the things that only humans can do in that context, because you're a
Absolutely.
skilled practitioner. And just one, I know we're going to finish, but one point in that as well is that I think we need to talk much more clearly about how all of this will help the unpaid carers and the people who are needing the information, needing the data, needing the support in that. And digital opens up lots of opportunities to provide better support to unpaid carers as well.
Absolutely.
You heard it first here, people, especially politicians. Vic Rayner told us we need to be bold.
And use technology and data more.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vic.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share your favorite Take Care podcast with your friends and colleagues. Until we meet next week, take care.